You stand in a chancery, not a chapel. A ward lifts a sealed letter, a marriage on paper, a dynasty in ink. Records before rumor. 1455. Papal registers. Records indicate a marriage dispensation, medium confidence. You stand with the clerk as a seal lowers. Law, not rumor, sets the course. A ward's future shifts on parchment, custodia et maritagium, guardianship wrapped around marriage and money. A name adjusts to a contract. A household recalculates alliances. Power here is signatures, deadlines, and fees, not a romance, a schedule. Where is consent in a ledger that speaks through owners and officers? Tonight we read the state as it wrote itself. Canon rules, common law, chancery habit. We follow dispensation letters and petitions, not bedrooms, administrative pathways, not private bodies. Memory will speak in sorrow and anger. Records answer with clauses and ranges. Between them sits a question we cannot dodge: order or overreach, prudence or harm. We will keep the tone careful, the claims modest, the citations plain. 1450s, Wardship grants. Records indicate guardians controlled marriage choices, medium confidence. Our thesis is narrow and careful. Margaret Beaufort's assent runs on law, not legend. Wardship, consent, and property form a pipeline from parchment to power. Canon rules set thresholds for consent. Common law assigns custody and profit. Dispensation stitches alliances when doctrine would block them. We follow procedures, not bedrooms. Administration explains more than rumor. Scope runs from the late 1450s through her statutes in 1505 and 1509. We track royal grants of wardship, papal registers, household accounts, and college charters. Letters from gentry households show bargaining over time, dowry, and honor. Sermons praise virtue after victory, a genre that polishes edges. Records indicate processes. Travelers and chroniclers report impressions. Scholars debate what happened when doors were shut. Where numbers appear, we hold them as ranges. Confidence stays modest unless documents speak plainly. Two lenses keep the frame honest: a human file and the system that shaped it. Human lens follows one ward through guardians, patrons, and estates. System lens explains markets and custody, consistory courts, and chancery habit. We avoid graphic or intimate detail. We focus on clauses, fees, exemptions, and endowments that leave stone behind. Effects endure, motives stay off the page. 1450s, royal wardship. Records indicate guardians sold marriage rights, medium confidence. Begin with a contract, not a chapel. Wardship turns a child's future into a ledger entry. The crown or a great lord holds custody and the profitable right to arrange marriage. Guardianship folds property, alliance, and obedience into one authority. A ward's body is absent from the page. The page still moves their life. That is the mechanism we must read before we reach for moral verdicts. See Bodin 1450. Chancery practice. Evidence suggests wardship conveyed marriage control and profits, high confidence. Canon law speaks in thresholds and impediments. Common law speaks in custody and revenue. One sets conditions for valid consent. The other sells the power to choose a spouse. When thresholds clash with politics, a letter from Rome stitches a legal bridge. Dispensation does not narrate intimacy. It clears a path for alliance. Paper resolves doctrine with signatures and seals. 1455. Papal registers. Records indicate a dispensation enabling a dynastic match. Medium confidence. Custom adds delay to doctrine. Even with contracts in place, cohabitation could be postponed by agreement, households bargaining for time, education, or stability. The language stays administrative. Keep, maintain, provide, instruct. The pause lives in letters between stewards, mothers, and patrons. The archive shows negotiation, not a ceremony. 1450s, gentry correspondence. Evidence suggests deferred cohabitation by family agreement. Low to medium confidence, wardship is a market as well as a mandate. The crown grants or sells custody. Bidders weigh rents, dowries, and political return. Fees and fines flow through exchequer. Profits materialize in accounts as annuities and recoverable costs. A ward's identity becomes a portfolio managed by adults who speak the language of debt. The arithmetic is cold and durable. 1440s, 1460s, exchequer rolls. Records indicate sales of wardships and marriage rights, medium confidence. Courts keep the edges from tearing. Chancery enforces bargains and restrains abuses when profit outruns duty. Consistory courts judge spiritual impediments and the validity of consent when kinship or age complicate plans. The legal verbs are quiet but decisive: to enjoin, to appoint, to ratify. Equity polices guardians when the letter alone fails. The system's mercy is procedural, not sentimental. 1470s, Chancery bills. Evidence suggests frequent recourse to equity against guardians. Medium confidence. Families resist without revolt. They promise payments in place of haste. They designate tutors. They seek reputable households for service until unions turn practical. Gentle pressure appears as petitions rather than slogans. Reputation travels with these letters. A guardian who listens earns future bids. A guardian who squeezes meets lawyers. 1460s, household accounts. Records indicate schooling and service arranged pending cohabitation. Medium confidence. Canon thresholds invite debate more than certainty. Scholars argue over how often consent doctrine stopped matches and when local practice simply worked around it. Parish life tolerated many quiet compromises. Courts intervened when rival interests collided. Evidence suggests the boundary between law and custom was porous, by design. That porosity kept the machine moving through war and succession. 1450s, 1470s, consistory cases, scholars debate enforcement patterns of consent rules. Low confidence, property technologies harden choices into institutions. Fee offies, to uses shelter estates while heirs remain underage. Later statutes codify or unwind those shelters. Trusteeship converts private will into public-looking duty. The prehistory of colleges and charities. When a founder rises from ward to patron, the same tools that guarded assets endow learning. Administration becomes landscape. Clauses become buildings. 1490s. Legal treatises. Evidence suggests widespread reliance on uses and trustees. Medium confidence. Our tone stays careful because paper reports effects better than motives. A ledger shows money set aside for a young household. It cannot tell you who sighed. A statute sets terms for a college. It does not confess regret. Records indicate process with high confidence. They infer feelings with none. We keep to the part the archive can carry without breaking. 1480s, 1500s, statutes and charters. Records indicate founder oversight framed as duty. High confidence. What emerges is not a single rule, but a choreography. Wardship creates capacity for alliance, dispensation aligns it with doctrine, equity trims abuse, custom slows impact at the kitchen table. Each piece depends on the others. Remove one, and the dance stumbles. This is why legend misleads. It isolates a moment. The file shows a system. 1460s, mixed jurisdictions. Evidence suggests overlapping remedies shaped outcomes. Medium confidence. We close part 1 with a simple compass. If you ask where consent sits, the answer is layered. A spiritual yes, a legal custody, and a family's timing. If you ask where power sits, the answer is literal, in hands that hold letters and rents. Margaret Beaufort's path runs along these rails. To see the person, we first map the track. The next segment follows her file as it thickens into office and influence. Her file begins where emotion rarely intrudes. Grants, dispensations, accounts. A royal ward carries value as custody and as alliance, and guardians speak that value in fees and promises. Marriage appears first as a power to be sold, then as a contract that folds a household into a wider design. The page shows movement before motive, a sequence of clerks, not a chorus of witnesses. We follow that movement because it leaves dates we can test. 1455, Papal registers. Records indicate a dispensation enabling a dynastic match. Medium confidence. Guardianship moves her between great houses. Instruction under reputable matrons. Supervision by stewards who balance rents with reputation. Household books track tutors, linen, travel, and offerings that signal piety understood as duty. Letters ask for placements that make a young gentlewoman legible at court. Safe lodgings, polished conduct, useful kin. None of this narrates intimacy. All of it constructs a future that officials can certify. The file grows thicker without saying who smiled. 1460s, household accounts. Records indicate schooling and service arranged pending cohabitation. Medium confidence. Estate management hardens the tone. Receivers render farms into columns. Council drafts covenants to shield manors from opportunists. Guardians look for marriages that add acreage without waking lawsuits. The talk is of uses, annuities, recoveries, instruments that freeze land into predictable income. Each signature reduces uncertainty, which is the currency of politics under strain. Evidence suggests law outlives calamity. When a husband dies, Jointure, dower, and custody reconfigure the map in prose, not lament. A widow negotiates from statute and from leverage, choosing allies who understand both. The record registers losses as alterations in title and charge. It is unsentimental because it must keep paying servants on Thursday. That is how survival reads in Chancery Inc. 1457. Estate memoranda. Records indicate adjustments to jointure and custody after bereavement. Medium confidence. Motherhood turns private stakes into public calculations. A minor heir attracts friends and enemies who read futures in his name. Guardianship multiplies counsel. Every letter remembers that rents must meet retainers. Quietly, a network forms. Lawyers, chaplains, stewards, all fluent in the grammar that keeps claims alive. The archive notices them when fees change hands. It rarely pauses to describe their rooms. 1471. Legal correspondence. Records indicate coordinated counsel to preserve a minor's claim. Medium confidence. Office arrives later, not as romance, but as paperwork with teeth. When her son takes the crown, her signature touches patronage, pardons, and provisions that steady a shaken realm. Household ordinances codify generosity into order. Petitions receive answers that sound like policy, not favor. Influence writes as process. Boards, audits, obligations that distribute grace at scale. The same skill that once defended a manor now calibrates a kingdom. 1485, 1487, royal grants and ordinances. Evidence suggests expanded influence over patronage and relief. Medium confidence, piety becomes institution. Endowments bind revenues to learning and worship, setting statutes that outlast tempers. Founding a college is not a confession. It is a legal machine for teaching, staffed and funded by rules. Trustees administer what benefactors imagined, keeping receipts down to the wax. The language is meticulous: admission, maintenance, repair, so that memory can stand without gossip. 1505. Christ College statutes. Records indicate founders' oversight framed as duty. High confidence. What does the file say about will? Less than rumor wants, more than silence fears. It proves capacity to read counsel, to endure setbacks, to convert custody into leverage, and leverage into offices that finally wrote her title as king's mother. Scholars debate where prudence ends and principle begins. The page refuses to judge. It will, however, show you how power learned to speak in clauses. Bridge to market. The patterns in one life reveal a traffic in many. Wardship did not make an exception to razor. It made a pathway any bidder could try. Prices, papers, and petitions explain the rest. The next module listens to families who bargained for time inside that same machine. You read a petition opened on a Qadi's table. Elders asking for time, not absolution. A failed harvest, thin stores, a missing team of oxen. They speak in seasons and rents. The guardian answers through counsel, offering a schedule or a fee if the court will allow it. Nobody invokes romance. Everyone counts Thursdays and dues. Delay becomes a remedy written in steady ink. 1450s. District Court Minutes. Petitions seek deferral after poor harvests. Low to medium confidence. Gentry letters echo the same grammar in warmer tones. A mother asks a steward to place her daughter in a reputable household until conditions improve. Schooling, service, and safe chaperonage substitute for haste. A pause with dignity attached. Reputation becomes a currency guardians cannot ignore. The letters travel because reputations do. 1460s. Gentry correspondence. Letters propose schooling pending cohabitation. Medium confidence. Consistory courts translate doctrine into timelines. Consent remains a threshold. Impediments remain real, yet households negotiate when to live together. The court notes kinship and age without staging intimacy. It orders prudence, not spectacle. Custom slow walks law so families can keep face. The record shows compliance that leaves room to breathe. 1460s. Consistory cases. Evidence suggests negotiated timelines were common. Low confidence. Equity polices the edges when profit bites too hard. Chancery enjoins coercive bargains, binds guardians to fair dealing, and orders bonds for good behavior. Injunctions read coolly, yet they cool tempers. The threat of scrutiny makes haste expensive. Power pauses because paperwork makes rushing risky. 1470s. Chancery bills. Records indicate injunctions against excessive pressure. Medium confidence. Wardship is still a market, and markets improvise. A fee for time appears in marginal notes, a sum paid to defer, framed as reasonableness. Receivers record it. Auditors grumble. The village exhales. Substitutions remain rare, but their rumor travels faster than the writ. A precedent begins as a whisper between clerks. 1474. manorial role. Evidence suggests fee substitutions in rare cases. Low confidence. Household accounts show the human texture of postponement. Tutors are hired, linen replaced, a place at a distant hall reserved. Payments to female guardians and trusted matrons carry the pause with honor. These entries look small. They keep lives from colliding. Administration becomes care when money is allowed to wait. 1450s, 1480s, household accounts. Records indicate payments to female guardians, medium confidence. Church officers add counsel without drama. Visitations admonish patience, instructing households to avoid scandal while contracts ripen. Parish custom prefers quiet solutions that protect names. Sermons praise prudence in the abstract, a genre that flatters the careful. We weigh them lightly but keep their effect in view. 1470s, episcopal notes. Records indicate admonitions for prudent timing. Low confidence. Not every plea succeeds. The archive keeps denials concise. Some guardians press advantage. Some families lack leverage. Some judges hurry because calendars choke. Those pages leave memory raw and stories sharp. Later, neighbors will tell the outcome as rescue or injury. Records file it as compliance or cost. 1460s, mixed jurisdictions. Evidence suggests outcomes varied with leverage, medium confidence. Women drive many of these negotiations. Mothers write, aunts chaperone, widows manage retainers and rents while counsel bargains. Agency shows as signatures and receipts rather than speeches. The verbs are steady, to appoint, to maintain, to delay, yet the effect is decisive. Soft power moves hard calendars. 1450s, 1470s, legal and household papers. Records indicate women directing arrangements, medium confidence. Set these petitions beside Margaret's file and the pattern clarifies. The system flexes, slowly, procedurally, in ways that protect reputation while advancing policy. Memory remembers the flex as mercy or as price, depending on the year. The paperwork remembers it as governance. From this ground, we can judge claims without borrowing heat from rumor. 1470s, chancery and consistory overlap. Evidence suggests layered remedies shaped practice, medium confidence, bridge to systems and evidence. We gather the ledgers, letters, and statutes that made these pauses possible, then measure their bias and range. The next section states what we can prove, what we can only infer, and where scholars still argue. Procedure first, verdicts later. Evidence sits in genres, each speaks with its own grammar. Muhimi-style orders in England are royal grants and writs. They define powers and deadlines without explaining hearts. Papal registers read as solutions to doctrinal knots. Terse Latin, precise purpose, little context. Household and estate accounts reduce lives to expenses and rents. Linen, tutors, alms, yet those lines outlast rumor. Sermons arrive last and loudest, polishing virtue after victory in phrases designed to endure. If we weigh them the same, we misread the room. Procedure whispers, praise sings. 1445 Monty, 1509. Mixed archives. Records indicate distinct genres require distinct weights. High confidence numbers tempt certainty. We resist with ranges. Ages appear as thresholds in canon commentary, not as birthdays in parish ink. Wardship sales surface as fees and fines, not as a census of every match. Letters from gentry households survive where paper was saved, not where rain found trunks. Scholars debate frequency more than existence, which is why we count patterns, not anecdotes. Silence in the record marks the edge of our map. 1460s, Chancery and Exchequer. Evidence suggests partial coverage of wardship transactions. Medium confidence. Bias is not a flaw to erase. It is a feature to read. Clerks rode upward to supervisors and patrons. Success leaves longer trails than failure. Preachers wrote to edify a regime that had won a civil war. Restraint was rare. Families wrote to protect names and dowries. Embarrassment edits memory before ink dries. Each motive bends syntax and selection. The safest sentence names a process and leaves motive alone. That is why our verbs stay cool. 1470s, 1480s. Household papers. Records indicate self-presentation, shapes survivals, medium confidence, cross-checks stiffen claims without pretending to certainty. A dispensation date aligns with a shift in estate expenses. A household ordinance echoes a sermonic theme. A college statute codifies piety into payroll. When two genres converge on a sequence, confidence climbs a notch. When they diverge, we keep both and ask what each was built to prove. Divergence is not defeat, it is a clue. 1505, college statutes and accounts. Evidence suggests alignment between devotion and administration. High confidence. Law lives on paper, custom lives in the pause between papers. Canon sets consent at thresholds that admit exceptions. Equity polices bargains when profit outruns duty. Local practice stretches calendars so households can adjust. These layers do not cancel each other, they choreograph. A ward can be legally contracted, canonically bridged, and practically deferred until conditions stabilize. The choreography leaves marks you can audit. 1450s, 1470s. Consistory and chancery. Records indicate layered remedies shaped timing. Medium confidence method keeps us patient when a story wants heat. We mark assertions with records indicate when the verb and date are in hand. We say evidence suggests when alignment beats anecdote, but leaves room for doubt. We say scholars debate when good arguments split along source boundaries or regional habits. Confidence is not a mood. It is a measure of friction between genres. Viewers deserve to hear that friction out loud. Late 1400s, historiography. Scholars debate enforcement patterns and regional variance. Medium confidence comparisons can clarify without collapsing context. Continental practices of noble contract and papal grace echo in English files, but markets, courts, and crowns differ by revenue base and revolt risk. Where French guardianship leans on seigneurial rights, English wardship hardens around royal prerogative and a legal market in marriages. The rhyme matters, the difference matters more. We keep analogy short and jurisdiction precise. 1450s, 1490s, comparative practice. Evidence suggests shared tools, divergent incentives, low to medium confidence. Outliers warn against neat arcs. A guardian who listens writes a concession that travels as reputation for a decade. A guardian who squeezes earns a bill in chancery and a cautionary verse. A parish that cherishes prudence reports fewer scandals. Another keeps its ink for tithes and lets rumor carry the rest. The file is uneven because people are, and because storms and wars chew paper. We do not fix the edges by guessing. 1460s, 1470s, visitation and bills, records indicate variable oversight by place, low confidence. Language matters because it encodes power. Custodia et maritagium names custody and marriage as linked assets. Fee office, to use his names, a shelter that turns kin into trustees. Statute names a will that outlives a signature. Replace these with modern outrage and the archive goes quiet. Keep their terms in view and the machine becomes legible, even when offensive to present sense. Clarity is not forgiveness, it is the precondition for judgment that lasts. 1450s, 1500s, legal vocabulary. Records indicate stable terms for custody and trust, high confidence. We place Margaret Beaufort inside this grid without granting legend the microphone. Her path shows how law could elevate prudence into durable power, ward to patron, mother to founder, influence to institution. It also shows how families could bargain for time without halting a crown's prerogatives. Effects we can prove, motives we can only infer. When the archive runs out of sentences, we stop short of psychology. 1485, 1509. Royal and collegiate records. Evidence suggests process translated into policy and endowments. High confidence. The final caution is moral and methodological. Stories about harm often seek a single villain or a single absolution. The record we read refuses both. It documents a system that monetized custody and managed consent, then permitted piety to launder memory into stone. We can condemn the structure while staying exact about its verbs. Precision is not coldness. It is respect for those who lived under those verbs. 1450s, 1510s. Mixed sources. Records indicate durable procedures with human costs, medium to high confidence. With sources weighed and limits named, we turn to the last reveal. Archives show how influence returns to the map as colleges and alms, framing biography as institution. The gesture softens some memories and sharpens others, a bridge that is also a receipt. We will read those statutes as the landscape's memory of one ward's ascent, then close by setting record and memory side by side without forcing them to agree. 1505, 1509. Statutes and wills. Evidence suggests institution as public memory, high confidence. You return to the page where rumor fades and stone speaks. A founder's statutes replace memory with rules, admissions, stipends, repairs, audits. Trustees carry her will forward in meeting minutes and receipts. Oversight is formal, not sentimental. A visitor's power polices drift when zeal cools. The machine of learning runs on regulated charity, not on legend. A dynasty hardens into classrooms and paybooks, biography converted into timetable. Christ's College reads like a blueprint for durable virtue. Ordinances bind money to teaching and worship, naming officers and penalties with care. The wording assumes crises, vacancies, arrears, bad stewards, and supplies remedies. That tone is the reveal. Where story seeks motive, the archive offers maintenance. Effects endure because procedures teach strangers how to care. St. John's extends the pattern after the founder's death. Executors translate intention into charter and endowment. Royal authority completes the hinge from private wealth to public good. The paperwork does not confess regret or pride. It secures bursaries, masters, and halls that outlive their sponsors. Infrastructure becomes argument, quiet, repetitive, stubborn. What does this mean for consent and wardship? The same legal tools that monetize custody also funded learning. We can condemn the market and still read the clauses that paid for books. Precision allows both. Scholars debate motives. The file records outcomes with high clarity. That is where our confidence belongs. If memory asks for a verdict, the record offers a ledger. It shows a path from ward to patron without staging a confession. Effects we can audit, hearts remain off the page. The bridge between them is statute, a language built to survive judgment. 1511. St. John's College Charter. Records indicate foundation completed under royal authority. High confidence. Set the two ledgers side by side, the royal file and the village memory, and neither cancels the other. Wardship operates as a market in custody. Dispensation stitches doctrine to politics. Equity trims abuses when profit runs hot. Consent exists in layers, not in a single moment. A spiritual yes, a legal custody, a family's timing. Sermons praise virtue after victory. Accounts pay tutors on Thursdays. Statutes teach strangers how to care. Precision lets us condemn practice without borrowing heat that blurs cause and effect. Agency shows in signatures more than speeches. Mothers petition, stewards bargain, widows command retainers while council measures risk. Reputation moves like currency through letters and fees, rewarding guardians who listen and disciplining those who squeeze. Petitions craft time without revolt. Injunctions make haste expensive. Custom slows doctrine so lives can adjust. Memory later will call these pauses mercy or price. Both readings fit their vantage. The archive files outcomes in nouns, bond, jointure, use, and leaves motive to rumor. Institution turns biography into landscape, colleges, ordinances, bursaries that outlast tempers and wars. The same tools that monetize custody paid for books and roofs. That paradox does not absolve, but it does explain. Our method keeps verbs cool and dates firm. Records indicate when paper speaks plainly. Evidence suggests when patterns align. Scholars debate where genres collide. Effects we can audit. Hearts remain off the page, and we say so aloud. Keep both ledgers open. Judgment that lasts begins with exact nouns. 1450s, 1510s, England. Records indicate durable procedures with human costs, medium to high confidence. You deserve a clear take, precise, not punitive. I read states in the voice they use for themselves, then add memory without erasing procedure. Wardship monetized custody. Dispensation stitched doctrine to politics. Equity slowed abuse. We can condemn that structure while keeping verbs exact. Precision is respect. It keeps judgment from melting into heat. Why it matters now sits beyond roses and crowns. Modern systems still translate people into forms. Custody orders, school placements, guardians' fees. Procedure promises fairness, then forgets the kitchen table unless someone writes. Learning this grammar helps protect the vulnerable and test big claims without slogans. It also honors communities that carry grief and pride in the same story. 1505, Christ College Statutes. Records indicate founder oversight framed as duty. High confidence. Behind the scenes, I chased a dry line in a papal register to a college gate. A charter date matched an audit note. A sermon's phrase echoed a household ordinance. Effects aligned across genres. Motive stayed off the page. That alignment raised confidence one notch, never to certainty. The work is patient. Ink, stone, then back to ink. Your turn. If you kept a village chronicle, how would you balance service and loss without varnish? Tell me which document you would trust first, and why. If you know a local archive, name it. We may read it on air. Place your case in clauses, not in caps. The comments are a ledger we write together. Vote the next episode and steer the series. Zanj Rebellion and the Ecology of Revolt. The Beiki Treaty and Frontier Tribute. Court eunuchs as an institution across regions. Say your choice in the first line, then your reason in one sentence. If this method earned your trust, subscribe and turn on notifications. It keeps the work independent and the sourcing transparent. Bring a question we can test in the files next week.